Good morning to anyone who's here watching this. Today's day 3 of my quitting marijuana and video games, my 90-day quit plan. It's a Friday morning. I'm pretty excited. We got the weekend coming up, which means we'll probably likely go out looking at a couple more houses, the wife and I today. So yeah, got some things to look forward to. And staying busy is always helpful when it comes to quitting anything. As far as my notes go from yesterday, I really don't have too much to go over. We went and looked at a house, or we actually looked at 2 houses, the wife and I, and the first one was a bit dingy. I think it had been a rental property, and the second one was really nice, and so we're actually kind of like on the cusp of maybe buying our first house, which is exciting, but also a little bit scary because you're borrowing a lot of money to do that. My friends that I've told about what I'm trying to accomplish here have been concerned, which is nice because it's been a while since I've had friends that were concerned about me. Those of you who are watching, you can probably hear the accent. I'm an immigrant from New Zealand, and for those of you who don't know my name, I'm Sam. And it took a while to develop or build a friends group in the United States. And particularly as you get older, it gets harder to make friends. So here's a good point for you young bucks out there. If you have good friends, maintain those relationships, because you'll be glad that you did later on in life when you need friends around you to support you when things get rough. But one of the things that came up yesterday that came up frequently was the fact that the more I sort of sat on what it was that I was doing and the more I thought on what it was that I'm doing here, the more it feels right, and the easier it is to explain to other people and to myself and to my partner why it is that I've needed to take these kind of drastic steps. And I'd like to go over that a little bit this morning, kind of to make a record of it. But some more thoughts from the morning. I slept pretty well last night. Because I'm quitting marijuana, there's this physical effect that happens. Excuse me. There's this physical effect that happens where, because of the profound effect that marijuana has on your gut and your sleeping patterns and your temperature regulation and digestion and sort of being in general, is that when you quit it, you go through some pretty strong withdrawals, similar withdrawals to other drugs, so headaches and appetite comes and goes, and you may feel nauseous or tired or depressed or irritated or whatever. And I feel like because my sights have been set well, that my mental state hasn't been overly impaired. But I have noticed that I had my first night of waking up a lot and sweating a lot during the night. But I got to sleep pretty quickly, and I was able to sleep most of the night, so that was actually really good. Anyway, getting back to the original thing I wanted to go over today was about why I chose to do this. So I'm 37. I started gaming, like properly gaming, when I left high school. I had been doing it during high school, and it had started to affect my grades. And then when I left high school, I did it a lot more because I was free to do so. And I didn't go to college. I ended up actually as a mechanic apprentice, and video gaming was a part of my life right up until the last few days, daily, most of the time, outside of when I would go on trips for work or away on vacations or those sorts of things. And during that time, I sacrificed nothing, and all I ever did was seek out comfort. So I gained nothing, and the comfort that I got, while it felt good in the interim, there was always that sort of pressure building where it's like, well, you're ignoring other things that need to happen. And that when I talked about it a couple of videos ago, the need to recognize that existential pressure and kind of recognize what it is and address it. And that's what I'm doing now. And the reason that I've decided to make such a dramatic cut with the marijuana and the video games is that, and this kind of comes back to those of you who are familiar with Jordan Peterson and Christianity or religion in general. is that sacrifice is necessary for gain. We look at it with working out. You sacrifice your time and your comfort to go work out so that you can get fit. The same goes for college. You sacrifice money and time to gain an education so that you can have more security in your future. And with marriage, you sacrifice the freedom of chasing other women and the freedom to make your own choices and do what you want to have the security of a family and a partner. So for me, it was 20 years of no sacrifice. The course correction that needed to happen was much more dramatic. So as such, that was my decision, was to make a dramatic course correction and offer up a sacrifice that was worthy of where I want to be. And so that the sacrifice was all gaming, all things nerd related and all things game related. That includes D&D, that includes Magic the Gathering, it includes the video games obviously, but also, you know, board games and everything. I understand it is a little bit of overkill, but as I said before, I felt that the sacrifice was reasonable, considering that I haven't done it and that I have to sort of course correct so dramatically that I need to do it. So that's kind of my motivation for what I'm doing here, and I wanted to get that out on in the air. It helps to talk it out. It helps to talk out what you're going through. Finishing up, I'd want to go over some tips that came up in my mind last night while I was laying in bed falling asleep, and some tips for people who are quitting anything. The first thing that you have to do is set your sights. You need to orient yourself in the direction that you want to go, and not just set your sights, but also visualize where you want to end up at the end of this. If you have a set, like if you're doing it for 90 days, what do you look like in 90 days? What does your life look like in 90 days? And then once you've set your sights, you need to sacrifice. You need to determine what it is that you're going to cut out to pay the price to getting to that better place. And you need to do it in a thoughtful way. Sacrifice should be done, I think, in a thoughtful way. You should be conscious of what you're doing. Eating and drinking is critical. Even if you don't eat, constantly drinking water is going to help. For people, particularly with marijuana, it's going to help to keep your gut moving, and it's going to help to keep you eliminating all the chemicals that are coming out when you're detoxing. So water and food, where you can, small meals. One of the things that I've learned is going away from 3 big meals a day and just eating small 300 to 400 calorie meals, maybe 5 or 6 times a day, or say 4 or 5 times a day, to keep your calorie counts high enough that you can get through without losing a crazy amount of weight, or you have enough energy to do the things you need to do. And then the last 2 things are a little more sort of ooly-booly, I guess, a little bit more sort of sky people type stuff. But the first one I would say is that when it hurts, you should embrace the pain. Where you can, when it hurts, when you're quitting something, that's your body. And I hate to use this trope, but the pain leaving the body, that's what, or weakness rather, weakness leaving the body. That's what pain is, and more accurately for me, the pain is a reminder that the course correction that I'm making is I'm going in at least somewhat the right direction. If it wasn't painful, then I'm going back towards comfort. And if I'm not feeling pain in the course of this quit, then I'm going in the wrong direction, and likely I'm not going to be successful. And going back to the gym analogy, it's the same thing there. When you're at the gym, if you're not suffering a little bit, you're probably not doing it right. Anyway, and then the last thing I want to say is, and I think this is the most important one, is when you're acting while you're quitting, when you're acting, when you're behaving, when you are being in the world, try to think of what you're doing as setting an example for other people, even if you don't have anyone to set an example for, because your behavior, when you think about it in terms of how other people see you, you will notice that there are things that are going to bring you a little bit of shame that you may be considering doing or saying. And when you're thinking about setting an example, it may make you sort of not say some of the things that might have dragged you down a little bit, and made things harder than they needed to be. Because it's hard enough as it is. And we don't need to make it harder for ourselves unless we're, sadists, or we have a plan to do so. Anyway. I'm sure this one's probably been a little more than 10 minutes. Oh no, there it is, 9:57. Look at that. Perfect. Again, if anyone's here watching, please feel free to comment. I'm not looking to try to build a YouTube channel here. This is just a daily vlog for me to keep accountability for myself, and maybe provide some thoughts or ideas for other people who are going through something similar. I've quit marijuana quite a few times for tolerance breaks, so I'm pretty familiar with it, and I have quite a few good tips for getting through how rough it is. Anyway, that's the end of day 3's vlog, and yeah, look forward to day 4.